you don't have to be a you don't have to have an account, sorry, to attend a Zoom meeting. As long as you are given a link or a code, you are able to go on and sit in on a Zoom meeting. So if you plan on hosting meetings, it might be beneficial to look into the Zoom packages. They do have a basic Zoom package, which is free. You can have up to 3 or 4 attendees on your session. So you don't have to pay, but if you're only going to be communicating with small groups, then this would be good for you. We have a package that's the next level up. So we can have up to 100 participants. Each host costs $20 each. So if it's just you, it would be $20 a month. You can pay annually instead. That's completely up to what your comfortability is. If this is going to be something you're going to use for the short term, then it might be worth it to go month to month as opposed to buying a yearly plan. For BRREA, we're looking at continuing this going on after COVID-19. So this is something that we're going to be utilizing a little bit more as time progresses as well. So for you guys, at the bottom of your screen, the first thing you'll see is the mute button. So initially, when you log into a meeting that's hosted by BRREA, you will be automatically muted. So if you try to speak, a message will end up coming up to tell you that you have to unmute yourself in order to be heard. Because I was talking, I got this message to say, hey, by the way, you're muted. No one can actually hear you. If you're not actually getting any sound, if you hover over the arrow button beside it, you can select what media source you're trying to listen through. So if you're dialing in, that would be your phone. If you're using your computer software, it might be trying to use your computer speakers when you have headphones plugged in, or if you're using AirPods, you may have to set those up, and that might be why you're not hearing any audio initially when you go into a meeting. So you can select what type of media you want to use. You can also test it as well and see whether it's working. And if you have any further issues, Zoom is very, very responsive when it comes to answering any questions that you might have. So if it's further technical issues, you could always reach out to their support team, and they are very quick at getting back. You can also come into a meeting without your video on. Some people feel more comfortable kind of testing the waters. You know, maybe you're grabbing a coffee before your meeting starts. You don't want to necessarily have people seeing you come and go. So I always go into a meeting with my video off so I can get set up, get organized, and then once the meeting is close to being started or more people start sharing their camera, then I start jumping in with my video as well. There's some really neat features with video options on Zoom. So also here you can set up what type of camera you're using. If you have an external webcam that you're using versus something on your computer, or if you're not using your cell phone, then you can set that up here. But you can also choose a virtual background. So for me, I'm in the basement, so my basement is kind of dark and dingy. So I created a virtual background that looked a little more professional for me to be doing a Zoom meeting. So when you hover over and click on the arrow beside the video aspect, you can click choose virtual background. And this will give you a list of some preset options that Zoom has. I created a few of my own. Canva offers some great free templates that you can download from there. So that's where I made the one that I currently have. Or you can use any picture that you have from your device that you're using. So if you have a picture of the beach that you were on vacation on a couple of years ago, you want to reminisce, you can have that as an option as well. So you can preview it before it goes on to your video and then select it, or you can choose to have none and it will just show the background of the room that you're in. Okay. So when you're looking at your video, you can have a couple different views. You may not, it doesn't initially show to manage the participants. So for me, because I'm sharing my screen as well, it doesn't come up to the right-hand side of my screen. I get an extra pop-up. You may have it set up so that you're in full screen. If you're in full screen, you'll have the same view that I have. If your screen just covers your entire screen, but you're not actually in the full screen mode, then it will show up on the right-hand side of the video option. So all of the cameras will be in the center, and then your participant guide will be on the right-hand side of your screen. So the participants are listed with hosts first. So you can have you as the host, the co-host, any number of co-hosts, and then the guests are listed alphabetically by first name following that. So you can scroll through and see everybody who's on. It will tell you whether their mic is on. It will tell you if they have video on. As the host, you have more options than an attendee would. So you can unmute someone if you notice that they're trying to talk and they've raised their hand or something, and you can unmute them if they're having any issues trying to get that unmuted on their end. If you want to make someone a co-host, if you hover over their name and click more, you have some additional options. So you can make them the primary host. You can make them a co-host so that you both have the same features. They would then have the same host options that you would as the primary host. You can allow any member within your meeting to record the session. If that's not set up, then when someone requests to record it, you'll get a little pop-up saying that someone has requested to record the session. You can rename them, or if you're clicking on it yourself, you can rename yourself. So if you don't have video up, depending on what is currently showing there, it might not necessarily be your name. Some Zoom meetings I've been on lately, they want to know what association you're with as well as your name. So you can change it so that it would be, you know, Felicia from BRREA, or whatever name you wanted to go by for that particular meeting. You can also have a waiting room. So some meetings, Zoom has automatically defaulted that waiting rooms be turned on when you're setting up a meeting. So it would mean that anybody coming into the meeting before the host would have to be approved before they actually enter the meeting. So if you wanted to put someone back into a waiting room, you could do that as well. Or you could opt to have them removed from the meeting altogether. If you want to stop their video for whatever reasons, perhaps they're doing something inappropriate, you can also manage that as well as the host. And you can make them a spotlight video. So what that would do is where all of the videos would be in the center of your screen, instead the person speaking would be there instead. You do have the option to chat individually with members or any attendees of the session. If you click beside that person's name, you'll chat directly with them versus the entire group. You can also search for a participant. When you click chat, it will bring up the chat box and it will tell you the person that you're actually communicating with, and it will indicate that it's privately. So this will just be a communication between you and that particular person within the meeting. You can send them files. You can save the chat if the host has that option turned on. Or you can, from here, if you pick the wrong person, select another person or send a message to everyone. So when you send a message, the chat option is not specifically when you're a host. Anyone in a meeting can chat with anyone else in a meeting. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a host feature. So when a message gets sent to the group, you'll typically get a little number by your chat option on the bottom to say that a new message has been sent, and you can respond from there. When you have your participant and your chat guide open, they will both go on to the right-hand side. So your participant will be on the upper side of the right, and the chat will be underneath that on the bottom right-hand corner. There's also some non-verbal communication methods that you can use if you're trying to get consensus or a vote on something. If you're running a vote, you can have people indicate, yes, I'm in favor of that, no, I'm not, by clicking the yes or the no options. When people do this, you get an indication on your screen of everybody that has indicated their selection, and a total of those options will be displayed here. If your guests feel that you're going too slow on the meeting content, they can indicate go faster, or if you're going too fast, they can indicate go slower. And they can also show their satisfaction or unsatisfaction with a thumbs up or thumbs down based on whatever content you may be sharing at that point in time. There's a clap option. Recently this week, there was the BRREA AGM. Because that was a virtual webinar, obviously there was no applause when the key points of the presentation were held, so guests were able to use the clap feature to show their support in whatever was happening. If the meeting's running long and you're just really hoping that maybe the host will take a break, you can indicate that you need a break. You can click the coffee cup. Or if you're stepping away, you can indicate that you're away and turn your video off, because not everybody who has their video off is necessarily not at their computer. This would be just a good way to indicate to the host that you're not actually there, in case it's an interactive session and they're pulling people from the audience to participate. There is also an option to raise your hand. I believe it's under the more. So in this option, it should allow you to raise your hand. So when you raise your hand, a little blue hand will show up in the upper left-hand corner of your window with your video. So that will indicate to the host that you either have a question or you're looking to participate in another way. You have something that you'd like to say. And if you're looking at the participants, you can see everyone who has raised their hand. Elle has raised her hand. Does that mean you have a question, Elle? Or are you just testing? As the host, you're able to...
Sorry, Felicia.
Yep,
no,
okay.
I don't have raise hand in the more option. I have it on the first left icon.
Over here beside the yes?
Well, on the same bar as the more. So there's raise hand, yes, no.
Right there. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So then as the host, you're able to clear any of the items that show up. So whether if you're taking a vote and you've got your results in, you can clear all, and that will clear all of the votes or any hands that might have been raised by any of your guests after they have participated with what they were looking to provide their input on. Another thing to note is that when someone other than the host is speaking, their name will come up to the top of the participant guide to show who is speaking. If there's a whole bunch of microphones on, it will also list those alphabetically and then go into the rest of the participants. As the host, you're able to invite additional members. So if you notice that someone you had meant to invite wasn't there, you could send them an invitation from the meeting so that they can join the session. The top people that you've had a meeting with recently will show up in your contact section. I've only had a communication with our president recently via Zoom, so she's my main contact here. You can choose to send them an email as well. So you can select what your email provider is, whether it's a Gmail. If you're using your phone, it would be Apple Mail. I use Outlook. So if you click the default one, it will just set up the email in whatever your default email carrier is. You can also choose to copy the URL, which is the link for the meeting, and just paste that into a text message if you were doing it on your phone, or copy the invitation and put it into an email manually for a couple people if you wanted. You can also mute and unmute everyone as the host. So if everybody's speakers were on when everybody first came in and everybody got their introductions out of the way, you could then mute everybody once the meeting was getting started so that there's no background noise. Being home, I have kids, so I typically keep my microphone muted when I'm not speaking, just so that there's no background noise with my daughters being around. It's just respectful to the other participants as well as the speakers or hosts to keep your microphone muted if you're not actively participating in any particular moment. Also, as the host, you can set up polls. This would be done when you're initially scheduling a meeting. So if you're doing it online, that's where I found I was able to set up the polls. So if I close that, when you go into Zoom and you go into your account, under your meetings, this is where you would select your meeting to enter a poll. So if you click on the name of your meeting and scroll down, you have some additional options after you set up your initial meeting. So you can click on poll. Right now I have one question. So when you want to run your poll, you would just click the poll button. It will show you the poll question. If you have more than one, it will list them. And then when you're ready for that poll to go into your session, you can click launch polling, sends it out to the attendees. It will tell you how many people are in your session, how many people have voted, how many people you're waiting on voting, how long your session for your poll has been running, and it will also show you real-time results of the poll that you were initially on at that time. So I see we all haven't gone totally loopy being in the house for a month. My grass is mostly brown, but that's winter for you, right? So when you're ready for the poll to be done, whether you're basing it on a time frame or actually all of the attendees have voted, you can then end the polling and it will highlight the most voted option in a different color from the rest of the voting features. So you can then share the results with the group, or you can relaunch the poll to try and get the last of the people that maybe hadn't voted on that poll initially. When you're in the actual meeting online, you can see what the questions you have are and the answers that you gave. When you're setting up a poll, it allows you to have 14 different answers. Oh, 10, sorry. But it seems to have an unlimited amount of questions that you can have. So if you were running an actual meeting, you were posting motions and you were looking for people to have a vote on a vast number of options that they could choose from, then that might be a feature that you would utilize. Sharing your screen, so you can have it so that attendees are also able to share their screen. Would be good if you're working with your team. You could all collaborate. When you're in the share screen option, you can select what window you want to have open. I have 2 screens, so depending on what screen you want it on and then what you want people to be able to see. It will always ask you this before you actually share your screen so that nobody's seeing your messy desktop like you saw on mine before. Or so you can specifically select what you want to have shown. You can also have a whiteboard option. So if you're brainstorming and you wanted to have some ideas kind of tossed around without going through the chat option, everyone would be able to collaborate on your whiteboard. So you could select that and then everyone could include their ideas. There is the annotation options, so you can type text. Apparently my keyboard's angry today. You can draw markups. So if you wanted a line or an arrow, there was something on the screen that you wanted to point at, you had a question about something specific, so you wanted to circle it so that the host could see that you wanted to ask about this specific part. You could stamp it if you really liked it. You could put a heart. If you really weren't sure about it, you could do a question mark. With the host, you can spotlight your mouse so that people can see where your mouse actually is. Sometimes white mouse, white background, you can't find where it is on anything. So the spotlight option allows you to see where the mouse actually is, so you can follow along with the host on whatever they're doing. You can choose to erase. For a text box, it will erase all of it at once. When it's a drawing markup, it will erase, similar to the Paint app that you used to have a long time ago on the original computers. It would erase whatever portion your eraser was on. You can clear all of the drawings at a specific moment. You can clear just yours as the host, or you can clear the markups that your participants have contributed to whatever topic you were discussing. You can also choose to save it so that if you were brainstorming, you wanted to keep all of your ideas, then you could save it to your local computer or whatever device you happen to be using at that time, so that you can go back to it at a later point in time. If you are sharing your screen, it will give you an option to pause your sharing so that you can go back to the main Zoom option, and then pick up where you left off when you come back. So if you were taking a break in the meeting, you wanted to pause the sharing on your desktop so that you could actually do some other work while you were waiting to come back from the meeting, you could do that. Or you can stop the sharing altogether. This will tell you what you're currently doing. So this is your whiteboard option. So it will give you the annotation marks. If you were just sharing your screen, it would show annotation there instead of the whiteboard. So that members could do their markup here. So if they had a question about the poll, they could circle that there. So you can allow remote control of your desktop to any participant that's on a meeting. You would have to click the remote control and then select the person that you wanted to give the control to. So if they didn't necessarily have the presentation, but they were co-presenting with you, then you could, at their point in time in the meeting, give them access to control your specific screen so that you could have them continue on their part of the presentation as well. So when you're sharing your screen, obviously your screen is just a little bit more condensed than it is when it's the full-size Zoom meeting. So all of the features aren't necessarily displayed on your screen at the top. If you have a brainstorming session that you're doing and you want to have groups go off into separate areas and work together to collaborate on something, whether you're trying to get their thoughts on different topics at a certain time, you can enable breakout rooms. So this will allow you to send specific numbers of people into separate Zoom rooms so that a certain number of people can collaborate at a time. So it will automatically, in some cases, recommend how many people should be in a room. So if you wanted to have 3 rooms with 4 to 5 participants per room, it would do that. You could create the room. It will show you the people that it automatically dispersed into that room, and you can exchange. So if you wanted to switch a couple people around so that you had a certain dynamic in each room, you could do that. And what that would do when you open the room is it will send an alert to the participants to say your host wants you to enter the breakout room. And then when you select that you want to enter into that room, the main meeting area will be empty. So everyone will have dispersed into their breakout rooms, and they'll be collaborating with the people that are physically in, or not physically, virtually in their designated breakout room. When you're going to call people back, you can set up a timer and say, okay, you've got your 1-minute warning, wrap up your ideas. We're all going to go back to the main room. And then once that's done, everybody will show up back in the main meeting area. You can also choose to add a room if you figured out that maybe you didn't want 5 people in a room, maybe you only wanted 3, you could add a couple extra rooms after you've already indicated the selection of rooms that you wanted. Well, that's kind of a neat feature if you're looking to get a small group's perspective on any particular idea. You can also schedule to record a meeting. I had this meeting set to record automatically, so that's why I only have the options of pause recording and stop recording. But if you weren't recording your meeting, this is where you would be able to actually start recording. So if you reached a point in your session where you wanted to have this so that you could send it out to your team or your members in our case, that would be where you would select it from there. You can also from here allow or disallow your participants to annotate. So right now I have it set up so that anybody could use the annotate features and mark up my screen should they want to. And also the end meeting feature. There's a lot of great resources on the Zoom support. So if you're ever running into any issues, they have, in some cases, very specific videos that you could watch to get help on any specific criteria that you're looking for in your meeting. Their support is just support.zoom.us, and they have it broken down based on what you might be looking for. So I really do recommend that if you're struggling with using Zoom, that you utilize their resources as well. That's all I had. So let's open it up. Does anybody have any questions? Yay, nay on the session? My first one, so go easy on me. But any specific questions on Zoom itself or anything that you were hoping might have been covered but wasn't?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Elle.
Virtual background. I keep trying to upload an image and it comes back saying green screen background. What's that and how do I take care of that?
Okay, so let me go into mine. Oops, that's not the screen. So if I go here, so if you go to the arrow and you choose your virtual background, it's saying I have a green screen.
Yeah, it comes back.
Okay, so if you uncheck that,
Yeah.
does it still give you issues?
Oh, wait a second. Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
And you're doing a great job. This is great information, Felicia. Okay. Well, I'll play around with it, but is that what you're saying the solution is? Just uncheck that?
Yeah, I found that when it indicated I have a green screen, my background just went completely wonky. So I unchecked that, and the virtual backgrounds are a little trippy. So if you happen to have anything that you pick up, so your coffee cup, sometimes it doesn't always recognize it. So it just kind of looks like, depending on what you're wearing and what your background is, it could just be a floating head. So the virtual backgrounds are very cool and very unique, but they can be a little off-putting sometimes depending on the background and the outfit you may have chosen to go with that background on that day. So if you have any further issues, Elle, just reach out to me via email and we can try and get either set up a separate Zoom meeting for us or try and help you via email.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Anything else? No? Okay, well, I want to thank you guys for coming out today and, participating in our meeting. Like I said, we've recorded the session, so we'll hopefully have this posted on the message of the day by tomorrow at the latest. Depends on how long it takes the recording to upload. So please feel free to reach out to me at any time. My email is felicia@BRREA.com, or you can reach me on my cell. It's in my email signature, but it's also just 519-771-5660. So please feel free to reach out if you're struggling with anything, not necessarily Zoom related, but anything at all. Please feel free to reach out. We want you to know that your staff is here for you in whatever you may be struggling with. So thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic day.